This lecture focuses on infection control and safety, and specifically microbes and pathogens. By the end of this lesson, the following terms you should be familiar with. To start, what are microbes? A microbe, which is short for microorganism, is a small living organism that can only be seen with a microscope. It's found everywhere in the environment, found on and in the human body, and they prefer warm, dark environments. Microbes also need a source of food and moisture. Some of them may need oxygen, but not all. Those that do are called aerobic, and those that do not are called anaerobic. They can be beneficial to the body, meaning they are not pathogenic, but they can be harmful to the body, and that would mean they are a pathogen. There are multiple different ways that microbes can enter the body. That can be through open cuts, wounds, or bites, coughing or sneezing, contaminated water, contaminated food, direct contact, and also sexual activity. There are 6 different types of microbes: bacteria, viruses, fungi, protozoa, rickettsia, and helminths. Bacteria are single-celled microbes that rapidly reproduce and can damage cells directly. They often will release toxins, and most are killed by antibiotics. There are some antibiotic-resistant bacteria, including MRSA. Examples of diseases caused by bacteria are strep throat, salmonella, cholera, TB, typhoid, and bacterial meningitis. Viruses are tiny, non-living particles. Smallest microbe, much smaller than a bacteria. They can only reproduce inside a living cell. They are spread by bodily fluids, including blood and mucus. These are not killed by antibiotics. Examples of diseases caused by viruses are HIV, SARS, H1N1, West Nile, Ebola, and smallpox. One important difference to know in regards to viruses versus bacteria is that viruses are much smaller than bacteria. Here you can see a bacteriophage. That's the sort of cone-looking weird alien thing. That is a virus that's infecting a bacterial cell, which is the much more elongated cell. Some examples here: HIV/AIDS is caused by the human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV. It's spread by blood serum. It starts with flu-like symptoms. The virus specifically attacks helper T cells of the immune system, which causes a suppression. This allows for individuals to become much more susceptible to infections, and currently there's no cure or vaccine. Another example is influenza. Influenza is a common viral infection that can be deadly, especially in high-risk groups. It's spread by airborne droplets, direct contact, bodily fluids, and contaminated surfaces. It attacks the lungs, nose, and throat. Symptoms include fever, chills, muscle aches, cough, congestion, runny nose, headaches, and fatigue. The infectious stage of influenza begins 1 day before symptoms appear, which makes it much more difficult to treat. Fungi are small plant-like organisms. They live on dead organic matter. They can be large, like mushroom, or small, like molds. Yeast and molds can be pathogenic, and these are not killed by antibiotics. They are treated with antifungals. Examples include athlete's foot, ringworm, thrush, and many different allergies. Some examples of fungi include the mold that grows on food. The next example is protozoa. These are single-celled animals that are much more complex than bacteria. They are found in decaying matter and contaminated water. Many of them have a thread-like flagellum, that's a whip-like extension on the back, that allows them to move. Some protozoa are pathogenic. Examples include malaria, dysentery, sleeping sickness. Here is an example of the malaria parasite. Rickettsia is a type of non-mobile, non-spore-forming bacteria. They must be inside a living cell to live and reproduce. They are transmitted by bites of fleas, ticks, mites, and lice. They can be killed by antibiotics. And examples include typhus, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and certain diseases that infect plants. Helminths is a multicellular parasite, also known as parasitic worms, transmitted by eating contaminated food, water, bites, or when they break through the skin. Examples include tapeworm, roundworms. Just another note on the size of microbes. Again, viruses are much smaller than bacteria, but bacteria are much smaller than regular animal cells. An example, if a cell was the size of a baseball diamond, then a bacteria would be the size of the pitcher's mound, and a virus would be the size of a baseball. Now we're going to move on and talk about infection briefly. The following terms you should be familiar with. There are 5 different types of infection: pathogens, which are disease-causing organisms; opportunistic, that occur when the body is weak; exogenous, they originate outside the body; endogenous, originate inside the body; and hospital-acquired infection, or HAI. Infectious means likely to spread infection. The infectious stage is a period of time that a person can transmit that infection to another. During this time, the person is considered contagious, and the illness can be passed from one person to another. An example is with the flu. As I mentioned earlier, the infectious stage begins one day before symptoms appear. There are a series of different stages of illnesses. The incubation period occurs when there is no signs or symptoms. The prodromal period is when there is mild signs or symptoms. Then there's the period of illness, which is most severe and has the most severe signs and symptoms. Then there is a period of decline, and that's when the signs and symptoms are still there but lesser. And then there's a period of convalescence, which includes a recovery period. And that will do it for this lecture on infections.